Someone once looked me straight in the eye and told me that 36 years of my life were worth just $36. He wasn't joking. He was the CEO of the company I'd devoted my entire adult life to, and he smiled as he said it. He believed he'd finally crushed the one employee he'd always hated. What he didn't realize was that, within a few weeks, everything he had built his career on would begin falling apart. The company would lose the one thing keeping it competitive. Employees would start walking away, and the man who laughed at me would end up begging for my help. By then, it was already too late. My name is Martin, and I'm 51 years old. I never finished high school. When I was a teenager, my father passed away unexpectedly, leaving my mother to raise several children alone. College wasn't even something I could dream about. My family needed food on the table, not another student sitting in a classroom. So, the day my classmates continued their education, I started looking for work. It wasn't easy. Most employers barely looked at my application before rejecting me. Without a diploma, I was invisible, eventually. Found part-time work washing dishes and serving customers at a small family diner. The pay wasn't much, but it helped my mother keep our family afloat. I thought that was as far as life would ever take me. Then one ordinary morning changed everything. I was cycling to work when I heard someone shouting behind me, "Stop him." An elderly businessman was desperately chasing a thief who had stolen his briefcase and escaped on a bicycle. Back in school, I had been one of the fastest sprinters on the track team. Without thinking, I pedaled after the thief. Within moments, I caught up, forced him to stop, recovered the briefcase, and returned it to its owner. The older gentleman looked at me with relief written all over his face. "You've saved me." Feeling embarrassed, I smiled. "If you really want to thank me, come have lunch at the diner where I work." I gave him the restaurant's name and rushed off before he could say anything else. The following afternoon, he walked through the front door. His name was Richard. He owned a manufacturing company nearby. After we talked for a while, he surprised me with a question. "Would you consider working for me?" I stared at him. "I've been looking for someone with determination," he said. "Degrees matter, but character matters more." It was the first time anyone had looked beyond my education. I accepted immediately. That single decision changed the course of my life. Richard didn't just hire me, he believed in me. I started on the factory floor doing physically demanding work. During the day, I learned everything I could from experienced workers. At night, I studied on my own. Since I couldn't afford school, books became my teachers. Every manual I could borrow, every industry magazine, every business article, I absorbed everything. Years passed. My supervisors noticed my work ethic, and eventually I was promoted into the sales department. I was 30 years old. That's where I met Daniel. He was assigned to train me. At first, I thought we'd get along. Like me, he'd grown up poor. Unlike me, he'd worked his way through university with scholarships and part-time jobs. I respected that. Unfortunately, he didn't respect me. On my first day, he looked at my employee file before saying coldly, "You and I aren't the same." I frowned. "I struggled for years to earn my degree," he continued. "You quit school. Don't compare yourself to me." I was stunned. It wasn't the last time he'd remind me. Whenever I made a mistake, he blamed my education. Whenever I succeeded, he dismissed it as luck. Sometimes he refused to teach me entirely. "If you can't figure it out yourself, maybe you're not smart enough to be here." Eventually, I stopped asking him for help. Instead, I learned from everyone else. I'd quietly watch experienced salespeople negotiate. I'd stay after work studying old contracts. Sometimes I'd even observe Daniel's meetings from a distance, trying to understand why clients trusted him. Little by little, everything started making sense. My confidence grew, so did my sales. Month after month, my numbers climbed higher. Then one quarter, something happened no one expected. I outsold Daniel. The company posted everyone's results on the office board every month. For the first time, My name was at the top. His wasn't. That afternoon, he called me into an empty meeting room. Before I could ask why, he grabbed the front of my shirt. A high school dropout thinks he's better than me. His face was bright red with anger. You got lucky. Don't get carried away. Looking back, I don't think he hated me because I lacked an education. I think he hated the idea that everything he'd sacrificed for his degree didn't automatically make him superior. A few months later, Daniel transferred out of sales and into human resources. Officially, management said he wanted broader experience before moving into executive leadership. Unofficially, he couldn't stand losing to me anymore. Life moved on. Richard eventually retired, handing leadership to the next generation. After several years, that CEO became seriously ill and stepped down. The board needed a replacement. Daniel had spent years building connections inside human resources and senior management. He got the job. The day he became CEO, I promised myself one thing. No matter what happened, I'd continue giving my best. Not for Daniel, for Richard. I owed that man everything. For a while, things seemed normal. Then Daniel began settling old scores. I'd already been told I was being considered for a department manager position. The previous CEO had even discussed the promotion with me. The announcement never came. Instead, Daniel happened to pass me in the hallway one morning. With a crooked smile, he said, "A department manager?" He laughed quietly. Someone without a proper education should know his place. Then he walked away. That was only the beginning. Over the next several weeks, my biggest client accounts were reassigned to younger employees. When I asked my own manager why, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. The CEO wants them to gain experience. He lowered his voice. I don't have a choice. Years of relationships, gone overnight. Naturally, my sales numbers dropped. Not because I'd become worse at my job, because I'd been stripped of the very clients I'd spent decades earning. Then, things got even worse. Several inexperienced employees made costly mistakes with those accounts. Guess who had to fix every problem? Me. I spent my days repairing damaged client relationships. Instead of finding new business, most evenings I was still sitting in the office long after everyone else had gone home. My overtime requests disappeared without explanation. Not once did I receive extra pay. Daniel wasn't finished. A few months later, the company's evaluation system suddenly changed. Academic qualifications became part of every employee's performance review. Anyone with a university degree automatically received additional points. No matter how strong my results were, I'd never again receive the highest possible evaluation. The change passed easily because most employees benefited from it. Almost no one questioned why the policy had appeared so suddenly. I knew exactly why. It wasn't about education. It was about me. Every day became harder than the last. I found myself staring out the office window long after sunset, asking a question I'd avoided for years. How much longer can I keep living like this? 6 months after Daniel became CEO, I finally reached my limit. I submitted my resignation. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply exhausted. 2 days later, an email appeared in my inbox. Come to the CEO's office within 5 minutes. I took a deep breath before knocking on the door. Daniel didn't even bother looking up. So, I hear you're resigning. Yes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he reached across his desk and slid a document toward me. This is your retirement payment. I glanced down. $3 million. That figure didn't surprise me. I'd worked for the company for 36 years, and Richard had always made sure loyal employees were taken care of. Before I could say anything, Daniel pulled the document back toward himself. His smile slowly widened. I can't let someone like you receive this. He folded his hands. So this morning I revised the company policy. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Employees without university degrees who leave before mandatory retirement will now receive $1 for every year they worked. He leaned forward. You've been here 36 years. His grin grew even wider. So your retirement payment, he paused just long enough to enjoy the moment, is $36. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. 36 years. $36. Every winter morning, I'd arrived before sunrise. Every late night. Every family event I'd missed. Every promise I'd made to the man who gave me a chance when nobody else would. According to Daniel, it was all worth $1 a year. Something inside me finally broke. But instead of arguing, I smiled. Then I'll follow the rules too. His eyebrows knitted together. What are you talking about? I simply thanked him for everything and walked out of his office without another word. He thought he'd won. He had no idea those would become the most expensive $36 in corporate history. The day I walked out of the company for the last time, I didn't look back. 36 years had come to an end with a handshake from Human Resources, a cardboard box holding the few personal items from my desk, and a retirement payment that had been reduced to $36. I told myself it didn't matter anymore. I'd chosen peace over revenge. At least, that's what I thought. The following morning, I was busy handling paperwork for my new job when my phone began vibrating. Across the table. Once, twice, 10 times. I silenced it. A few minutes later, it started again. By the time I finally picked up my phone, there were more than 200 missed calls. Every single one was from Daniel. As if on cue, the phone rang again. I answered. Before I could say hello, he exploded. What did you do? His voice was shaking with anger. What are you talking about? Our entire sales system is gone. He almost shouted the last sentence. You deleted everything. I remained calm. Yes, you admit it. I do. You've destroyed company property. That's a crime. No, I replied quietly. It isn't. There was complete silence. Then Daniel laughed. It wasn't a confident laugh. It was the kind people force when reality sounds too ridiculous to believe. Don't be stupid. That system belongs to the company. No, I repeated. It belongs to me. Another long silence followed. Finally, he asked, almost whispering, What are you talking about? The automation system your sales department has been using for years. I designed it. I wrote every line. He immediately rejected the idea. Impossible. Then check Richard's contract. The confidence disappeared from his voice. Years before I joined the sales department, I worked on the factory floor. Back then, the company had grown so quickly that everyone was drowning in paperwork. Inventory records were handwritten. Orders took forever to process. Workers stayed late almost every night just trying to keep up. People were exhausted. One evening, I watched a documentary about companies using software to automate repetitive work. A simple thought crossed my mind. What if we built something ourselves? When I suggested buying commercial software, management explained it wouldn't work. Our production process was too specialized. Existing programs couldn't handle it. Most people would have accepted that answer. I didn't. I started teaching myself programming. After work, on weekends, late into the night. For nearly a year, I studied while everyone else slept. Eventually, I built a custom inventory system from scratch. When Richard saw it, he couldn't believe it. You built this. I wanted to make everyone's jobs easier. Within weeks, it was installed throughout the factory. Overnight, paperwork disappeared. Errors dropped dramatically. Employees finally stopped working themselves to exhaustion. Richard insisted I deserved a reward. I refused. I did it because I care about this company. He smiled. I know. Years later, after moving into sales, I noticed another problem. Sales staff spent hours preparing quotes, processing orders, updating customer records, and completing repetitive administrative work. So I did it again. Without telling anyone, I built another system. This one automated almost everything. Quotes, orders, customer records, reporting. Tasks that once took hours now took minutes. The department's performance skyrocketed. Richard insisted we patent the software. This time I agreed. but I still refused additional payments. I've already been given enough. Richard shook his head. No, you've given this company something priceless. A week later, he called me into his office with a contract. I want to protect you. The agreement was simple. The company could use my patented software, free of charge, for as long as I remained employed there. If I ever left, ownership stayed with me. I could either negotiate a licensing agreement or remove every copy of the software, including backups. The decision would be entirely mine. Only Richard, the legal department, and a handful of senior executives ever knew. Daniel wasn't one of them. He never asked where the software came from. He simply assumed the company owned everything. Back in the present, I could hear papers rustling over the phone. Daniel was obviously searching through company records. I notified the company before deleting the system, I said. Everything was done according to the contract. His breathing became heavier. I was actually planning to leave the software behind. I paused. We both turned around. It was the executive who had hired me. He had just finished work and walked outside at exactly the right moment. Daniel immediately tried to explain. This is between me and my former employee. The executive looked at him calmly. No, he's one of my employees now, and the software you're demanding belongs to him. Our company holds the exclusive license. You won't be getting it back. Daniel frowned. You don't have the authority to make that decision. The executive smiled. I negotiated the agreement myself. Only then did Daniel realize who he was talking to. The color drained from his face. The executive took one step closer. And after witnessing you threaten one of my employees, I'm also reconsidering whether our company should continue doing business together. Daniel's mouth fell open. That client represented millions in annual revenue. Losing them would be devastating. People nearby had begun slowing down to watch. Some whispered to each other. Others recognized Daniel immediately. His confidence completely disappeared. He lowered his head. I'm sorry. It was the first sincere apology I'd ever heard from him. Please, if we don't get that system back, our company may not survive. I looked at him for several seconds before answering. You had every opportunity to treat me fairly. You chose humiliation instead. You didn't lose the software because I left. You lost it because you made sure I wanted to. He closed his eyes. I continued. The answer is no. If you come here again, security will escort you off the property. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel turned around and slowly walked away. Watching him disappear into the distance, I didn't feel victorious. I simply felt free. A month passed. My new job was everything I'd hoped it would be, for the first time in years. I woke up looking forward to going to work, instead of wondering what humiliation was waiting for me. My experience was respected. My ideas were welcomed. No one cared that I hadn't finished high school. They cared that I solved problems. One Friday afternoon, I received a call from an old coworker. Martin, he said, have you heard what's happening? I've heard a little. It's much worse than you think. After my patented system had been removed, the company's daily operations had fallen into chaos. Tasks that employees used to finish in minutes were now taking hours. Sales staff were buried in paperwork. Orders were delayed. Customer complaints piled up every single day. The younger employees Daniel had promoted instead of experienced workers couldn't keep up. One by one, frustrated employees began handing in their resignations. Some left for competitors. Others simply refused to continue working under Daniel's leadership. The company that had once been known for efficiency was now struggling just to complete basic daily operations. Then came the biggest blow. Several long-term clients decided not to renew their contracts. They weren't willing to risk delays and poor service. Revenue dropped sharply. Within weeks, the company's financial situation became critical. The board of directors could no longer ignore reality. Daniel was called into an emergency meeting. By the end of the day, he was no longer CEO. Officially, he resigned to accept responsibility. Unofficially, everyone knew he had been forced out. His obsession with settling a personal grudge had nearly destroyed the business. When I heard the news, I didn't celebrate. I simply put my phone away and went back to work. There was no satisfaction in watching someone ruin their own life. A few days later, another call came. This time, it was from a lawyer. "I have good news for you." He explained that Daniel's last-minute change to the retirement policy had no legal standing. Company benefits couldn't simply be rewritten overnight to target a single employee. The policy had been declared invalid. As a result, the company was legally required to pay me every dollar I had originally earned, not $36. The full $3 million. There was more. The lawyer had also reviewed my employment records. For years, overtime requests had either been ignored or deliberately withheld. The company now owed me every unpaid hour, with interest. A few weeks later, the money arrived in my account. I stared at the balance for several minutes, not because of the amount, because it represented something much more valuable: respect, recognition, proof that the years I'd devoted to that company hadn't been meaningless after all. That weekend, I visited my mother's grave. I brought fresh flowers and quietly sat beside the headstone. For a long time, I didn't say anything. Then I smiled. "We made it, Mom." When Dad passed away, I promised I'd take care of everyone. I hope I kept that promise. The wind gently moved through the trees. In that peaceful silence, I remembered something she'd told me years before she passed away. "You don't need fancy titles to make me proud. You just need to be an honest man." Back then, I hadn't fully understood what she meant. Now I did. Success isn't measured by degrees, or job titles, or how much authority someone has over others. It's measured by the kind of person you choose to become. Daniel had everything I didn't: a university education, executive status, power, influence. Yet none of those things made him respected, because respect can't be demanded, it has to be earned. Richard understood that from the very beginning. He never hired me because of what was written on my resume. He hired me because he saw determination where everyone else saw limitations. That single act of faith changed my entire life. Even now, I still think about him often. Whenever a younger employee asks me for advice, I always make time for them. Whenever someone struggles, I remember how it felt to have doors closed in my face. And whenever I see talent hiding behind insecurity, I try to do what Richard once did for me: give them a chance, because one opportunity can change everything. People sometimes ask whether I regret spending 36 years at my former company. My answer always surprises them. No, I don't regret those years. They taught me discipline, patience, perseverance. They introduced me to people who became lifelong friends. Most importantly, they led me to the future I have today. What I do regret is staying silent for so long. I believed enduring unfair treatment was the same as loyalty. It isn't. Real loyalty should never require sacrificing your dignity. If someone constantly tears you down, takes credit for your work, or makes you feel worthless, walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's the bravest decision you'll ever make. As for Daniel, the last thing I heard was that he struggled to find another executive position. His reputation followed him everywhere. Companies weren't interested in hiring a leader known for abusing employees and driving away talent. Ironically, the one thing he'd always judged people by their resume couldn't save his own career. Life has a strange way of balancing the scales. The man who believed a diploma determined a person's worth lost everything because of his character. The man he called just a high school dropout found a workplace where experience, integrity, and hard work mattered more than appearances. Looking back now, I realize those $36 were actually a gift. Not because of the money, because they forced me to leave a place where I had stopped being valued. Sometimes the worst day of your life is only the beginning of something far better, and sometimes the people who underestimate you end up teaching you exactly how strong you've become.